is this? What is this I that we talk about? Is the question we are going to ponder upon today. Now, this is uh, this is something which we intuitively know, but at least I can talk personally. Until I had come in contact with Swamiji or heard um, about this topic, there was no framework to actually start appreciating this I. We all know it intuitively, but then we don't have a perception of it. We don't understand it, and even we don't think too deeply about this topic because we carry through the motions of our day-to-day life, and this aspect often gets neglected, where we forget who we truly are, right? And this the hope is that once we go through that, we can bring in a little bit of mindfulness around this concept and really look at, what we are doing. Is it catering to our real self, or is it catering to our superficial self? So who am I is what we are going to look at. So I've taken up a couple of shlokas today. However, the second one is what we will do a bit of a recitation. The first one we will quickly go through. Like I said, we have a hard stop today, so I'll try to wrap it up by 9:45 so that we have a little bit of time for interaction as well. Now, to start off with, give me a sec. Uh, just a sec. All right. So this is who we are, right? If our body is there, and we have, if we think about it, I mean, scientifically, it is proven that the amount of work that our body does when we are asleep, we are sleeping, how much work it does. Something is making it work, and that something is what we are going to look at. And amount of work this body does even when we are happily gone to sleep um, is equivalent to, let's look at it, 40 factories worth of work. That much work our body does when we are in deep sleep. That the work that is happening quietly inside our body. Something is making it work. Liver is doing its work, heart is pumping the blood, right? And pretty much all the organs, they are working like sorry, a well-oiled machine, quietly doing their work. And if this work were to translate into sound, it will produce such a large sound that you can hear it about a mile away. That much work is happening in our body. So it's actually something very miraculous that we have, God has given us, that we simply take for granted, and it's happening without even thinking about what is driving it. We are not a sum, what do you call that, a sum of some product of the chemicals that are there in our body. If we were to go by the chemicals that make up our body, it would be maybe a few $100, not even few $100, I would say. uh, you can actually decompose it into chemicals, but the consciousness aspect of it still cannot be replicated. So this is just to give you some kind of a thought. What is it that is driving our body even when we are asleep, which is worth 40 factories of work, and so loud, which is happening so quietly inside our body that can be heard a few miles away. Now, what is this miracle? What is responsible for that? So let's understand what Lord Krishna is talking about as basically the very concept of who we are. Okay. So I picked up a shloka from 15:7. I'm going to recite it. I'll let you recite the next one. In fact, I picked up two shlokas today. So in this particular shloka, Lord Krishna says, Mame vansho jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatanaha manashasthani indriyani Krati sthani karshati. So Lord Krishna is saying the embodied soul in this material world are my eternal fragmental parts. Lord Krishna is saying that very clearly. Mame vansho. Jiva loke. Jiv is us. Mame vansho. My ansh, my fragments. Jiva bhuta sanatana means they are eternal fragmental parts. Okay. Fragmental parts and eternal. This is the key word here. Now, because of that, what is the eighth wonder of the world? Eighth wonder of the world is not Taj Mahal. Eighth wonder of the world is not compounding. Okay, that might be another one wonder of the world. Another wonder of the world is no matter who we are, no matter which country, which religion, which gender, which caste, which creed we belong to, we are all seeking something common. And what is that seeking? That is seeking happiness. And this shloka explains that because we are fragmental parts of God, we are seeking happiness. Nobody teaches us to seek happiness, and still it is an integral part of our very existence. Okay? When we say integral part of our very existence, the day we are born, we announce to rest of the world, including our parents, that I am here to seek happiness by crying. Why do we cry? We cry because the process of birth is very painful. Both birth and death are painful, by the way. So, in order to alleviate that pain, the baby cries because when we cry, we feel light. So, crying is also a part of feeling happy. Now, why do we seek happiness without being told to seek so? In this shloka, Lord Krishna is saying, Mame Vansho Jiva Loke. That means you are my eternal fragmental part. So let's look at a bit of a philosophy. Why do we aspire? Swami Vivekananda had said that, O ye children of immortal bliss, just as a child is drawn to his or her mother, each part is naturally drawn towards its whole. So we are part of the God and we are drawn towards God. And who is God? God is an ocean of bliss. And that is why we are drawn towards bliss without being taught to do so. It's a very, very interesting and an important concept to understand. So, by this definition, all of us are seeking bliss, and all of us are seeking bliss, and bliss is God. So, everybody is seeking God, knowingly or unknowingly. There is nobody in this world who's not seeking God. They may not acknowledge, they may not understand, but they are seeking God. So, technically, nobody is an atheist. Can anybody say, I'm not seeking happiness, I am happy being miserable? If they're saying, I'm happy being miserable, again, they're seeking happiness. There are people called masochists. Just by taking pain, they feel happy. So, even the motive behind seeking pain is also happiness. So, there's absolutely nobody in this world who's not seeking happiness. Okay. So, that is the key symptom of our existence. We'll go deeper into that. So let's look at this philosophy through example. We have spoken about it a lot of times. Let's revise it. Like the water cycle, we know water goes into rivers, rivulets, finally flows back into ocean. Again, evaporation happens, condensation happens, clouds, rain, and the cycle keeps on repeating. So part comes back to the whole. This cycle repeats from ocean into the ocean. After becoming water vapor, it becomes cloud, then it rains or snows. Again, it comes back, flows back into the river and back to the ocean. So part is drawn to the whole. Even we can look at the real examples in this world to see this concept. Similarly, the fruit from mud into mud. It happens. Everything which comes from mud goes back to mud, including our body. Right? Newton saw this happening and he came up with the law of gravitation, because instead of worrying, he was doing chintan, and because of his deep chintan, he could detect that law. But everything falls down. So from mud into mud, again the same principle. The part is drawn towards the whole. That is the key concept to be understood. And we are also part of God, and hence we are drawn towards the, the whole, which is the ocean of bliss. However, since we have forgotten our identity, this is how we are caught up right now. Okay, this is our cycle that we are, uh, you know, in this cycle we are rotating in the cycle of birth and death. So there's no displacement. We just keep on rotating. Like you see this guy, even though he's technically walking, but he's not moving, just rotating at the same place. And same thing is happening to us as well. For as long as we are not out of this 8.4 million ka chakkar, lakh chaurasi, like they say that. Now let's move on and look at it from a different angle. So far we have come to this point that we all seek bliss, and God says, "You are my part, Ansh." Now, what is this Ansh? Let's look at it through another angle. So many things we have in our life, right? So let's look at this concept. It is a very beautiful concept. When I heard it for the first time, it really struck chord with me. And what is this concept? I versus mine versus I concept. So, my body, when we say something is my body, that means I'm not this body. For example, even in this world, when we say my house, am I the house? I'm not house. That is my house. My car, am I the car? Not the car. Similarly, we say my body. That means you're not the body. Your common sense will tell you that I am different from something that I'm claiming to be mine. Okay. Similarly, we say my mind. That means I'm not the mind. Now, people who have been attending JK Yoga sessions, they will say my intellect also, but intellect is not also us. When you say my spouse is not us. My kids, my family, they are also not us. My parents, that is also not me. And this whole world keeps on expanding, right? My mind, my this, my that, my relatives, my friends, material hooks, my family, relatives, friends, country, politics, sociology, etc. Right? My ideology. So none of it is I. Something which is mine is not I. So when people take on designations like their name, or if they are a doctor or an engineer or a lawyer, it is as good as saying, if somebody is driving a car, one is coming in a Corolla, other is coming in a Mercedes. Who are you? I am. The person says I am Corolla. The other person says I am Mercedes. Right? It's the same thing. That's just a name, label, or a designation. That is still not I. So what is that I then? That is what Lord Krishna is saying. You are my part, and that I is much more deeper and subtle. That is what your true identity is. We know that I remains constant, right? All these years when we are growing up, all the experiences that we have acquired, intuitively we know that that I is the same. So many experiences have come and gone, so many things we have seen, so many things we have witnessed, even our body, our face, so everything has changed, right? Still that I is constant, and that I is what we are going to talk about today. I hope this difference is very clear between I and mind. Something that is mine is not I. So this definition, if you keep at the back of your mind, you would know that you are something different from that. Right? My mood is not right. My mind is thinking like that. My this thing, my that thing. That means you are not that, and you're not even obliged to follow that. Yesterday we were talking about this concept. I think Shruti was asking. I don't. My mind doesn't. It doesn't feel like. Sometimes we are not in a mood, or we don't feel inspired, or we lose inspiration in life. Then what do we do? Should we wait for it to magically come back one of the days, or should we take control in order to figure out how to take control and inspire ourselves? So the idea here is to take control, because I part, the sakshi part, even the fact that we can read ourselves intuitively tells us we are not this body, because we can read our mind, and we know how some of the reactions of our body. If you have seen in some of the medical procedures, your body is out of your control, especially if you're coming out of anesthesia. It's completely out of your control, and I that my body is, it's shuddering, or this thing is happening, and you have the ability to read your mind as well. That means that sakshi bhav, that witness consciousness. Who is watching that? What is the source? I. That is my real identity, and that who is who we really are, not what we see in mirror every day. That is just a gross body. Okay? Even the mind is not us. Even the thoughts are not us. Okay? We go much deeper than all of the things that we relate our identity to. It's a very important concept. All right, so let's move on. Let's do this shloka quickly. So this is a very, very important shloka, one of my favorite ones, and a lot of you might already be aware of it as well. It says, Nainam chindanti shastrani, Nainam dahati pavakaha, Na chainam kledayantyapo, Na shoshayati marutaha. All right, we'll pick 5 participants because it is an important shloka. I would let them recite it, and then we will go further deeper into this conversation. All right, I'll have our co-host call it out who want to recite it.
Radhe Radhe, Ken's nephew ji, please go ahead.
Can?
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.
It's Kansa's nephew.
Okay, Kansa's nephew. Okay, that is Krishna. That is a good one.
Nainam chindanti shastrani, Nainam dahati pavakaha, Na chainam kledayantyapo, Na shoshayati marutaha.
Very nice.
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe. So Kans will be Ashutosh ji, if I were to guess that, but let's check it out.
Radhe Radhe, Kans ji, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe.
There you go.
नैनं चिन्दन्ति शस्त्राणि नैनं दहति पावकः न चैनं क्लेदयन्त्यापो न शोषयति मारुतः.
Very nice, Kansi. All right, we'll take 3 more hands and then we'll get started.
Radhe Radhe, Akansha ji, Akshata ji, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe. Nainam chindanti shastrani, Nainam dahati pavakaha, Na chaina kledayantopi, Na shoshayati marutaha.
Very nice. Let's take 2 more hands. Thank you. Very, very nice.
Radhe Radhe, Sandhya ji, please go ahead.
Radha Sandhya.
Radhe Radhe. Nainam chindanti shastrani, Nainam dahati pavakaha, Na chainam kledayantyapo, Na shoshayati marutaha.
Very nice, Sandhya. We'll take 1 more hand and then we'll get started.
Radhe Radhe, Sam ji, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe. Nainam chidanti shastrani, Nainam dahati pavakaha, Na chainam kledanti apu, Na shoshyati maruta. Radhe Radhe.
Thank you, Samji. Radhe Radhe. Manishi, since your video is on, let's take 1 more and then we'll get started. Please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe, Manish ji, yeah.
Radhe Radhe. Nainam chandanti shastrani, Nainam dahati pavakaha, Na chainam kledyantapo, Na shoshyati marutaha. Thank you, Radhe Radhe.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So let's get started. We have some content, and like I said, we have a hard stop today at 10. So 9:45, we'll try to wrap it up so that we get a little bit of time for our interaction and possibly some recitations as well. So I'll move forward on this one. Now, this shloka says, weapons cannot shred the soul, nor can fire burn it. Water cannot wet it, nor can the wind dry it. Now, just imagine how special we are in that sense. Right? All the fears about death that we are talking about, they should be laid to rest here. We are not going anywhere. Even after God realization, we retain our identity. Our existence will never cease. It's as simple as that. We just keep on getting recycled. We just keep on acquiring new clothes of mud. That's all it is. Nobody's going anywhere. It's just the posts or the relations that we see around us in every lifetime and build such a deep rooted attachment to them that that binds us basically. But factually, nobody's going anywhere. We are, God is saying, Mame Vancho Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. Sanatana means eternal. Eternal means you can derive a lot of solace out of it, that something which is eternal is not going anywhere. Technically, what we call death is simply shedding of our gross body, nothing else, nothing more than that. Somebody who dies, right? Dies means shed these gross covering, gets reborn with another gross covering. Somebody who gets born has to shed that. That is the principle. Buddha, once he was asked by somebody to resurrect her son. There was a lady who came, he said, I have heard you have mystical abilities. Can you please help resurrect my son? He said, sure, I'll do that. First, you get me, I think, mustard seed, something from a house where there has been no death. If you get it, I will do that. So this is a fact of life. Okay. Now let's look at it. What do we carry actually? So let's evaluate the spiritual anatomy that we have. We know our biological anatomy, that is fine. But now let's look at our spiritual anatomy. This is our gross body, which is made up of 5 elements. We spoke about these elements: earth, water, fire, air, and earth. Sorry, why I have repeated earth? It should be air, wire, water, sky rather. Earth is repeated twice, that's a typo. So it is sky. So this is our spiritual anatomy. And then the next part of it is the subtle body, which consists of 18 elements. 5 life airs, 5 working senses, knowledge senses, mind, intellect, and ego. Then we have the causal body. It consists of the account of karmas from endless past lives, including the sanskar tendencies carried forward from previous lives. Okay. Now we've looked at our gross body. Now we're getting into subtle body, causal body aspect of it. And then there is Mave Vansho Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. This is the I, or the our identity, which is called soul, which in turn is again energized by Paramatma. So soul is our identity, which is again energized by Paramatma. This is who we truly are. Right? Everything that we claim to be mine is not I. Okay. So this is our identity. And then what happens basically at the time of death, the soul discards this gross body and departs with the subtle and the causal body. Subtle and causal bodies, they travel with us. And then God again gives us the soul, another gross body, according to its subtle and causal bodies, and send the soul into a suitable mother's womb for the purpose. Okay, now suitable mother not necessarily is a human mother. Okay, that is not guaranteed. Now, after the soul gives up the gross body, there is a transitional phase before it receives a new gross body. It could be a few seconds or a few years. And when I'm talking about seconds, I don't know if it is the seconds which are being measured in the earthly sense or in the cosmic sense. Brahmaji's second can be pretty long. So before birth, the soul existed with the unmanifest, subtle, and causal body. So if you look at it, soul is formless, right? And it has these unmanifest, subtle, and causal bodies. And these continue to exist in unmanifest state. And then death is basically, it says it is no reason for grief. The wise, they understand this concept and they retain that knowledge. Easier said than done because of our conditioned state. But this helps us look at death in perspective. We are not going anywhere. We are perfectly safe. We may reject the body like a worn out cloth. It's kind of a mercy of God. Because let's say if we were to live here for 1,000 years, then we will become intolerable, not only for ourselves, but for people around us as well. So when people go really old, right, it's actually a mercy of God for, to take them, make them exit that body where it's no longer usable, and then give them a new suitable body around that. But nobody is going anywhere. Okay, we are going to be here. Like I said, even after God realization, it's not that you lose your identity. You will still continue to exist. It's like oil and water. They don't mix. So even let's say you are a jnani and you're going to merge with God, still you will retain your identity as a separate thing, right? You will be in a simultaneous bliss, and you have forfeited the opportunity to serve God. But it's not that you have lost your identity at that point. You still retain that. That is who we are. And this particular shloka, let's look at it. The attributes of the soul that Nainam Chandanti Shastrani says basically, everything in this material world can be broken down into pieces. We have seen that in the world, even the strongest of rocks can be broken down into pieces. But it's not true for the soul. Soul is defined as something, if you take the tip of your hair and break it into 1,000 pieces, and then take one tip of that and again break it into 1,000 pieces, that is the size of a soul, which is figurative, not literally, because nobody can try to do that. They don't even try to do that. Point is, it's a subtle thing. It's not material thing that you can actually perceive through material apparatus. People say that there were experiments carried out. The weight of the soul is 13 gram. There was a crack in the glass. Nothing of that sort. You can't capture soul. Okay. It's not a material entity. So they are all hearsay that can be rejected. The second one, it says, Na chayanam kledayantyapo. So it cannot be wet by water. Even the most rigid substances will also melt at a high temperature. However, souls cannot be melted. Even for organisms which live in deep water, the soul is the same. And even though they're living in the water, their soul is not getting wet, even for the aquatic animals. So God is explaining that soul is immune to all the physical laws. Then na dehati pavaka. When we are burnt in fire, humans can get accidentally burnt in fire, but soul does not get effective, and it will simply leave the body. Nothing happens to the soul. And na shoshyati marutah. That is, it cannot be dried in the wind like we dry the clothes. We do the drying act in the wind, right? But soul is untainted by that as well. And it can travel in the world from one body to another without being affected by material world elements. Okay, that is how resilient our soul is. So death actually has to be looked at it in perspective. See, we spoke about the fears part of it as well, right? So the life journey is more like Swamiji explains very nicely, is like people traveling in a train. When we travel in a train, some of the biggest friendships are forged in a train. You come to my house, the other person will also say, you also come to my house. I'll give you puris and he'll give you laddus. Some of the best friendships get forged there. And some of the biggest gossiping happens there as well. Why? Because they're very sure this person is never going to meet me again. Somebody can claim, I am son or the son-in-law of the deputy commissioner of Delhi, and I have 5 bungalows and 6 cars and this and that. Another person will return, I'm so and so. They know that they're never going to meet again. They forge those kind of relationships which are very temporary in nature. So if you really look at that journey, everybody boards a train with their own exit ticket where they're supposed to get down. And when they get down, they get down. If they tell you were my friend not too long ago, are you going to accompany me? Nobody will accompany them. Or you tell them you were my friend, can you change your station, and instead of boarding down at Ranchi, come to me to Jamshedpur or Calcutta? They will say, no, we cannot. Similarly, with these relationships that we forge are temporary relationships in this world. And when their duration is over, they have to part. That is how it goes. So death is something which is a part and parcel of everybody's life. Nobody is immune from that. And we just have to deal with it, look at it in perspective, right? They say that we all have to go through ups and downs in life. And ज्ञानी भुगते ज्ञान ते मूर्ख भुगते रोए. So if we are not having wisdom, then we will keep on crying for the rest of our life. one incident happens. But if we have wisdom, then we look at it in perspective and pick ourselves up. And that is what God expects us to do that as well. In fact, God has empowered us with so much of resilience that humans have an ability and the capacity to come out of some of the greatest tragedies that happen, like earthquakes, Bhuj, it happened. We do have that resilience to come out of it. Okay. Now, if you have knowledge, if the knowledge is coupled, even better. Then you look at it, even, obviously the pain is there, but that misery aspect is something that can be cut short with proper knowledge. Nobody can deny the pain of things that are so near and dear to us, that we form so strong bonds and attachments with. But at the same time, the fact of the matter is, it is one of those things which are beyond our control. We don't control that at all. So let me talk a little bit about that aspect as well. Yes, Sandhya, you had a question?
Yeah, I mean, we can discuss this question later as well, if the time is a
No,
limit.
go ahead. If
It's
there's some,
around the subtle body aspect.
yeah, sure. What is the question on subtle body?
Like the subtle body travels along with the soul when a person dies, right? So that consists of mind, intellect, and ego. So
Hmm.
this is something very new to me. Like our intellect travels, I mean, so the soul carries some intellect. That's
That is why they say, right? If you have cut a corner spiritually, for example, let's say you have learned a certain degree of letting go, you have learned a certain degree of forgiving, you have learned a certain degree of having control over your senses and controlling your anger. That is your perpetual asset. God will make sure you don't have to rework on that part. And the tendencies you have in this life, let's say you are very temperamental, or you are very jealous, or you look at negative things in people, or you are very sanshayatmak, ever doubtful nature. Those tendencies are also in causal bodies. The sanskars also get carried away. So the homework is fixed. The more you do now, the less you'll have to do later. That is how it goes. So people say, why spirituality? Let me just enjoy life like an ice cream. No, become like a candle, burn it, because if you don't do that, sooner or later you'll have to do that. You are actually digging a pit for yourself, right? Because God will repeat you with that. I spoke about that example of a bottle. The bottle, if it is corked, you put it in Ganga, give it 10 times bath. You take it out, it's still dirty, right? It's still dirty because it has not taken bath in Ganga as such. It was corked. Similarly, our mind, whatever mind, dirty mind or clean mind, however cleaning job we have done in this life, we have done with our mind, we will be endowed with the same mind in our next life. Nothing is going to change. It's not a hard reset where now we are fresh, we have become a baby, and now we are cool. Okay, now sanskars, new sanskars. No, same mind will come over. That's why people have tendencies, certain tendencies. Other day we were talking about phobias, right? Claustrophobia, agoraphobia, um, acrophobia, allodoxaphobia. How do you explain that? So that is how it goes. Yeah, Jyoti, you had a question as well?
Yeah. So when you are saying that soul is untouched of anything, so if soul is untouched of anything, so how can this get the emotions or whatever karma we do get carry over with time or with in next generation, or I mean
So
next life?
soul is the inspirer. It's like if somebody in BMW drives over people who are lying or sleeping in the street, right? And there is a case of hit and run, and this person says, I didn't do that, car did that. Okay, why don't you sentence the car? Will the judge agree? No, right? So the driver has to take the blame. Similarly, this baggage that we are carrying, soul has to bear that burden, because the mind senses is under your control. The soul is the inspirer. So the buck stops at the soul. That is why spirituality is all about cleaning our mind. Manev Manushyanam Karan Bandha Moksha. So emotions, negative thought patterns, all the strong feelings, the sanskars, the gunas, we only acquire it through the interface of mind and intellect that we have with this world. and soul has to bear the responsibility for it because it is the inspirer or giving it or energizing it. I hope that makes sense. That is why we are working on our mind and intellect to clean it through wisdom and get out of this world. The day you clean your mind, divine grace will be poured and you'll be a done deal. This whole the agenda of life is to do Antakaran Shuddhi. There is no other agenda of life. Rest all is created by us. We have started playing Ghar Ghar here and all those fancies and toys we have created for ourselves for our own entertainment. But from a God standpoint, they carry no weight other than the fact how much cleaning job you have done on yourself. So that is where the emotions of the things come from. Now let's look at, I hope that answered part of it, Jyoti. You can give me a thumbs up if you can't speak, that's fine. Okay, so next, we will spend 15 minutes. We have time, so 9:45 I will complete what we have to discuss so that we have 15 minutes for discussion and other things. Now this is circle of control. This is circle of control, and this is circle of no control whatsoever. Right. Now we have spoken about the soul part of it. We know that soul does not die. Soul is untainted. Now let's move on. So we spoke about, now let's look at this concept. There is a circle of control and there is a circle of no control whatsoever. We all have it in our lives. Okay. Now, the results, like others' efforts, destiny, will of God, we know this is circle of no control whatsoever. There are things which we cannot control. They are beyond our control. That's another matter. We keep on worrying about them. And we try to, change those things or spend a lot of time, energy, emotions on those. But the key thing here is to understand that there are things which are outside our circle of control. And then, of course, there are things which are under our control, circle of control. What are those? Our efforts, what we do, it's under our control. Acquiring wisdom, like we are trying to do now, it is well within our control. It's our free will, because of which we are sitting in this session and we listen to Swamiji's lectures, right? Positive mindset, it's a choice we make. It is within our control. Nobody can say that somebody is making me negative. No, you have made that choice. Nobody can make you negative. Pure intention, it's within our control. Sincerity at heart, pure intention is within our control. Hard work is within our control. Faith in God, building that systematically by acquiring right kind of knowledge, within our control. Acceptance, within our control. So this is an important concept. There are too many things which are beyond our control and things which are not. And then there is a serenity prayer. Maybe if you get a chance, type it, put it in a poster and put it in front of your refrigerator or whatever you like to look at for most part of the day. Okay, it could be mirror also. It says, grant me serenity to accept the things I cannot change and courage to change the things that I can. Most importantly, wisdom to know the difference. Okay. Now, talking of, yes, Sairamji, you had a question?
Radhe, Radhe. Only if you have time, otherwise I can discuss even at the end.
I'll come back. 9:45, we'll spend about 15 minutes.
Yeah, sure. No problem. Thank you, Radhe.
So you can do that. I just had a couple of other things and then we can get into that. Now, we've been talking about fears, right? Here also, let's try to map it. At least one of the fears we should be able to tackle it. So we spoke about the need to start creating a journal. Hopefully you all have started doing that already. Then first day we spoke about cause, put down your fears and then the cause for these fears. How did this fear start to begin with? Is it something you can do something about? Is what we are going to look at. Think about it. Now, is it something you can do something about? Is it within the circle of your control or outside of that circle? Right. Now, both options are there. If it is within your circle of control, do your best and then accept. If it is outside of your circle of control, simply accept through deeper understanding. These are the two options. Do we have any third option here? Any third option? In fact, Swamiji also goes on to say, to the extent, again, we got to be contextual here. When something is beyond your circle of control, means it's in the circle of outer which is not in your control. and there is a fear that you are living with for whatever reason. If you are in a situation to simulate or accept the worst and make peace with it, then everything else becomes a bonus. It doesn't mean you become negative, but for the fears that your mind simply has a habit of creating, first of all, we need to get out of that mindset, right? 16.3 talks about abhyam as one of the virtues. But let's say for some reason your mind has tendency to pick up on certain fears, and those fears are beyond your control. Part of acceptance is to accept the worst. Simulate in your head, accept the worst, that it will happen. Then after that, everything will start becoming a bonus. I don't know how easy it is for certain scenarios, but if your mind has started creating that stuff, and if you can do that, then things will become peaceful afterwards, because when you have made peace with the worst, that means you've already built that resilience. And then most of the fears are speculative, where it may or may not happen, then everything else is a bonus. If it doesn't happen, you'll be fine anyways. But the key here is to have an acceptance. So replacing fear with faith and acceptance. Right? Yesterday we spoke about this concept. There are only two plans. One is the plan that you make for yourself, that you think is best for you, and the other plan is that Krishna has for you. And fear stems from the fact that there is a gap in both of those. And that gap is unacceptable to us, makes us fearful, makes us anxious, or makes that gap intolerable for us. That can cause anger as well. But when we have deeper understanding, we will have better acceptance. In fact, the fourth principle of surrender, we will discuss surrender in more detail next week. Two things we discussed about: mine and I concept. Something which is mine cannot be I. So that directly corresponds to the principle of not having a sense of proprietorship for anything. When we say mine, we are having a sense of proprietorship, whether it's my body, my parents, my relatives, my child, my this, my that. Everything is, we are just a trustee of that. Nothing is mine. So that mindset, that will bring us more acceptance around it. No fear about things which are related to body. Body to begin with is a rented property that we have. It can be snatched away any moment from us, right? And second is the part of acceptance. Acceptance means you have a deeper understanding that there are things which are beyond my control, starting with my own birth. Did I choose to get born in a particular family, in a particular country, to a particular set of parents, in a particular circumstance? Of course not. So when our birth, right from the word go, we have no control. What gives us a sense of control, false sense of control around things around us, for which we keep on getting fearful? And if you think about the higher principle, Krishna's plan is unfolding. You make peace with it. You are aligning to the principle, align with God's will. That means you are not complaining. That means you are not becoming anxious if this result doesn't come, or what if this happens, so something bad will happen with me in this life. That means we are not aligning to that surrender principle. And there are fears you can do something about, like fear of failure. Why don't we put in our best as opposed to keep on thinking about failure only? And a lot of people, they are too too fearful of their exams, results, and stuff like that. Why not put in our best effort? And fear will anyway demotivate you and will not enable you to put in your best. It is said that in circus, when this guy walks on a tightrope, you've seen this guy walk on a tightrope. I think in Dawn movie, Pran used to do that. So when this person is walking on a tightrope, even for a fraction, if he thinks he's going to fall, he will fall. That much of conditioning is required, to do those kind of things. So what happened? Fear came, he fell down. So fear is actually debilitating. It's a lower energy. So with wisdom, we need to gradually start replacing it with faith and acceptance. And second aspect of it is we need to start improving the quality of our thoughts. If we become fearful in life for every second thing, there's a problem. That means we need to really train our mind. Our neurons are joining, forming certain neuron channels which are not good for our spiritual journey, and we can train them, like Swamiji says. Right? Neurons that wire together, fire together. So that wiring we can always change. It is programmable. So unnecessary fears is not a point. And then with wisdom, we can actually look at it in perspective, including the fear of death. We are not going anywhere. Nobody is going anywhere. It's just a temporary association we get from people who can, help us on this journey, and then that association will fall off. Right? There are so many waves which come through an ocean. Do they have a permanent association? Two waves are coming together in an ocean, and after that, both merge into the ocean, and never to be seen again together. And that is how it goes. So I think the knowledge is the only way to empower yourself around this thing. And when we have knowledge, then fear will start giving way to faith and acceptance. That is the key around it. We'll go much more deeper next week again on this concept. But any questions now that we have a stop at 10? I thought we'll spend the last 10 to 15 minutes having a bit of a discussion. So that's all I had for today. I can take some questions now. We'll not be able to do chanting today, unless, of course, nobody has any questions, but we can discuss anything that might be coming in your mind. I think Sai Ram ji was there, Lakshmi ji, and Kans. So 3 questions we can take.
Radhe Radhe, Sai Ramji, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe. I had a question on the slide with the subtle body, the mind, ego,
Sure.
intellect.
Yeah, what is the
My question is, Nitinji, what is the meaning of this ego? Isn't that tied to the mind and the intellect? I've heard about the term that ego is something that you finally have to cross over.
Yeah, ego is basically something that gives us a sense of I am somebody. Okay, so in our scriptures, this man, buddhi, chit, ahankar, they are referred to as man only. It is a subtle element as part of our this whole 4 complex. So antakaran comprises of all these. So ego is something like you will continue to have that sense. It's said that ego is the first thing to come and last thing to leave. Using this ego, you have to work on your ego. It's just like you take a pin, needle, you take a thorn to take out the thorn, and then both thorns can be thrown away. So using this ego, you have to work on this ego, put it in perspective, and then finally the ego will also melt away, because the highest knowledge is a realization that everything that you are able to do is done basically facilitated by God's energy. So that realization will come, and then your own sense of ego will also melt away. But it is part of your man, buddhi, chit, ahankar complex only, which is called antakaran as well.
Thank you.
No worries. All right, we can take Kripa. I think a new hand I see.
Radhe Radhe Nitinji. So is God realization same thing as enlightenment? And like I thought that after like God realization, you don't have to go through the cycle of birth and death.
Yes.
Is that true?
That's true. When we cross over Maya, when we do God realization, then we are past the circle of life and death. Then we are not obliged to come back. We can choose to come back as a service to God or participate in his leelas, but we are not obliged or forced to come back just because we have some pending karmas or unfulfilled desires and still under Maya. That is right. After God realization, we are beyond the cycle of life and death. Enlightenment, yes. Okay, hope that answered your question. Yes, Lakshmi ji.
Radhe Radhe. So while the soul leaves the gross body, it takes along with the subtle body and the casual body. So subtle body also has the life components. So does that not leave the subtle body while the soul leaves it?
So let's say soul is like a school kid, and your subtle body and causal body is the bag, ticket, and everything that it has to carry down.
Okay.
Soul is the fact. This is the baggage it has to carry, because this baggage is created by soul only. Okay. God says that the day you get rid of that baggage, you are a dundee.
Okay. Okay. So one more question is, as you said, there is 2 options for us for any problem. So I thought I got an answers for yesterday's question. Like you said, one is our will of decision taking towards the things to be done, and the other is the God's will, and there's a gap between these 2. So if we make us to accept and mind making, you are at the will taking a decision and ready to accept the worst thing. So but the tension or the problems comes down and it goes smoothly ahead. Am I right?
Yes, very true. God has a grand plan for us, which is unfolding when we are busy planning our life. Like he is a
Okay.
bigger picture. Like they say, the worst thing God can do to us is to fulfill all of our desires. So Swamiji was saying, right, Meri chahi na karo, main मूर्ख अज्ञान, तेरी चाही में है प्रभु मेरा कल्याण. So the point is, if we were to go by what we think is good for us, we are on a suicidal mission. It's just like if you put a child in a jewelry store and there's a candy lying there, it will neglect all the precious jewels and gems and settle for a candy. We are also like that. So God has a plan. We have to trust that. We have to have firm faith. God is protecting us. That is again a third or fourth principle of surrender also. But the problem happens where we start becoming anxious. No, only if this happens, then I'll be happy. Or so bad victim mindset, something bad is happening to me, my health is not cooperating, my relatives are not cooperating, my boss is not cooperating, everybody else is having a good life. All these things, that is where the trouble starts, right? And then fear, anxiety start building in and frustration starts building in. So we have to align to these principles, and then it will empower and free us up. We all like freedom. Fear is not a freedom, it is a burden that we carry. Who likes to live with a burden? Nobody does. So we should rather empower ourselves with knowledge as opposed to carrying the burden of these lower energies like fear, anxiety, stress, anger. They're not good for our mind, right? Our experience tells us that. Okay, maybe a couple of other hands we can take.
Radhe Radhe Ankuji, please go ahead.
Ankuji.
Radhe Radhe. Radhe Radhe Nitinji. Nitinji, my question is, as you say that once the soul departs, I mean, whosoever we are meeting out here, you give an analogy of, traveling in a train and then we depart. So, so how does, the rituals of that Shraddh and everything come into play?
Yeah, that's part of the basically the karam kand aspect of it, that has been designed in our scriptures. Somebody else will do shraddh for us, so we'll do it for them as well. It's more about injunctions from our scriptures that we should do for our scriptures, for our purvaj. Like Pitri Lok, they say when the journey is going on, when you do shraddh, they get food around that. So yeah, karam kand aspect is there. As long as we are in this bodily concept or this consciousness that we are a body, the karam kand aspect is necessary. It has to be done. It has to be followed. That's part of being courteous. That's part of being what do you call that, expressing your gratitude for your existence here. But once you have transcended that conditioned state where you are situated in true I, not this body, then these things are obligatory on you. But for as long as you are conditioned, our Karam Kand aspect really talks about what you need to do in every station of your life, including all these post rites that we perform, right? The Shraddh and the Ter and all that stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, Samji.
Radhe Radhe Samji.
Radhe Radhe. When somebody dies, normally they say the package goes with the soul, antakaran. So that means is a subtle body and causal body, something like 19 elements, 19 pieces of something goes with it, or 18 plus by the number. Number will be 19 or what?
I will count it as 18 and a half. Causal body is probably 0.5. No, I don't know. I'm just kidding. Elements are spoken about here. I don't know how much we can count the causal body part of it, because that is also a component. Maybe a one full unit you can count there. But yeah, point is they are carried over. Chit goes along with us, right? Till the point we engage chitta chor with us. The day he starts stealing your chit, then our job is done. But for as long as that is not happened, we have to carry this chit these sanskars, and they torment us. They could be beneficial as well, but they torment us. But I don't know. Yeah, to your question, maybe a full unit or half unit, I don't know. But 18 elements are part of the subtle body.
Because some people generally say 18 or something, or sometimes some say 20. I mean, it is a big figure. I'm just curious.
Yeah, I can check it up. I've never looked at that.
It's not important. Not at all. Thank you.
Okay, we can really take one question maybe, because 10 o'clock, or we can make some quick announcements if we have, and then we can, time permitting, we'll take question. Otherwise, we'll stop.
Yeah, I have only two announcements. The first one is for the Garba workshop, which is scheduled for tomorrow, Saturday at 5:30 p.m. The details are in the chat, and I can put it again. And if you would like to make your Sunday morning blissful, then you should join the Sunday Satsang with Swamiji, and the details are also there in the chat box. That's it for the announcements. And I think we can take Anita ji probably for 1 minute each.
Or you can put it in the feedback tracker, Shruti. We can take that tomorrow or also the next session. What I would say is, if there is one good habit you want to build, that would be start joining the satsangs, weekly satsangs. They will be immensely beneficial to you. Swamiji always says that. So do avail, take benefit from those satsangs. Yes, Anita, real quick, we can take one question and then wrap it up today's session.
Radhe Radhe Nitinji, I just had a quick question, like what the scriptures tell about donating our body parts.
Donating body parts, I don't know. At least I haven't come. I can ask that to Swamiji. But the key thing is basically the benefits that you get is when you are alive. After that, it's like I asked him, what if I do a charity of $1 million when I'm dead? He said, when you can.
Like after death, we donate the eyes and heart, like whatever the organs we can donate.
I don't have that answer. I can ask that to Swamiji if there is any scriptural reference to that.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, human body anyway is not very useful, unlike other animals' body. But if you pledge your eyes and something like that, are you going to get some brownie points from Yamarajji? That's something I can ask Swamiji, but at least I haven't come across any of this stuff. So, all right, I know we have run out of time. Shruti, you can put your question in the feedback tracker and we will pick it up. I look forward to seeing you next week. We will get deeper into this concept, plus the concept of surrender. Surrender is a very important concept to understand, right? Our whole life revolves around that, to perfect it or at least get better at it, because that will become our permanent asset. And also we will start getting into some deeper concepts of chapter 2. So thank you again, everybody. Have a wonderful weekend, a great rest of your day. And I look forward to seeing you next week. Over to the next session, Sunil Bhai and Ajay, over to you.